Like anywhere I go, the people who are doing the
I saw
most.
you laying yourself down in South Africa. I'm like, she protesting with the people.
Girl, I was like, what? This is not right. Let's go do this. I know, everyone's talking about that. Everyone's talking about that protest in South Africa. They're like, yeah, that was the right thing to do.
So yeah, they have a lot.
Well, and
going
we
on.
didn't, and it was saying, please support women. Who would I to be there? I was the only woman on that stage. I was the only woman on a stage of 3,000. I was the first woman to grace the stage in South Africa for this event. It's the largest event in South Africa. I was the only black person to ever be on their stage. So for me, and the atrocities that they were protesting were against black women. So I'm the only woman, the only black person. I'm the largest event in South Africa. And I was on my way to go do tours that day to visit Nelson Mandela's house.
Right.
I'll be doggone if I'm not supposed to be right here. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
How does that even happen? That, okay, you're in an African country. We cannot find a woman. We cannot find a black woman to be on our own stages.
Right. Well, it's because we are not the ones who are hosting the event.
You see, that's which is why we need to create. Sometimes you have to create your own table, right?
Right.
You can't. And
the other part is that you have to align with people who do command that attention. So now that they've got me. They've been asking me for 3 years. Now that they've gotten me, now I command that you have more people on this stage. So if you want to play with me, let me show you how I play. I don't play in a unilateral world. I don't play in an all man's world. I don't play in an all white world. I don't play in an all black world. I play humanity. Humanity is diverse. So let's show that on this stage. And so now that I'm at the table, it's my job. I dare not insist that door get kicked open for other people. And so I love it because I'm like, no, let me show you. You lack a little color. Let me help you. I know some great people.
I know some people
with talent.
Lisa Shante Nichols. I gotta say though, for Lisa Shante Nichols, the whole name, because just to have you here. I cannot start cannot start.
Right.
But
Where's
just to have you here, we just talked about, that you are the one for us. You've been the trailblazer on so many stages in so many ways. Did you ever imagine this for yourself when you were
way back in the day?
Yeah.
I didn't see it like this. I didn't see it like this. I didn't know it could look like this. It was different stages. The first stage is I wanted to give my son something better. And that would have been a win for me. And then I wanted to touch who could I become. Everyone talked about my potential. And I said, well, I want to meet her. And so it was a proving to me first who I could be in spite of what I've come through. Because of what I've come through, that I can be someone amazing with all of that behind me. God makes amazing things out of what some people call a mess. I just want to see who I could become. And then, quite honestly, how did I get to, on record we have that I touch, 56 million people a year. And I look at
you have like whole days named after you.
I do.
I'm like Lisa Nichols. I'm like, oh, she has a day named after her.
That's kind of crazy, right? That's kind of crazy.
She's been honored literally all over the world, all over the world. And here's something that I find so interesting, and something you said a second ago, is that your appeal or your reach. I don't even want to say appeal. Your reach is so broad, because I have been on your live jams where y'all are jamming out with Matt and everything.
From all over the world.
There's people from literally
52 different
everywhere.
Countries on our last online party.
Men, women, young, old,
barely
color,
speaking
creed,
English,
everything.
Right.
What do you think it is about you that speaks to so many different people?
I'm asked that question a lot, and if I distill it down, we can talk about the layers, but if I distill it down, at the very core, it's my honesty. At the very core, it's my willingness to allow you to see me. And you can tell that I'm not trying to protect any part of me. And so when I show you my beauty and I show you my ugly, I show you my pretty and I show you my dark, I show you my light and I show you my shadow, and I show you all of that, then you go at some part, and I show it in such a way strategically, because this is my craft. I show you in a way that your light, your dark, your truth can fit inside of this experience where I'm taking all the risk right now. And whether you ever speak out loudly or not, something in you goes, I'm not by myself. I'm not alone. She gets me. We're alike. I think when I started this journey, I was in my early 30s. I think what's happening now was happening then. And the best depiction of that is I was in Los Angeles and I just delivered a 60-minute keynote. And this guy came down to me and he said, "Young lady, I'm a 68-year-old white Jewish man. I'm extremely wealthy. I'm a director in Hollywood and I'm pretty tainted. And I feel like you're my twin sister." And I was like, wow, I want to create that experience where a 65-year-old Jewish man who was very wealthy, because I was a black woman in my 30s who was very broke, and somehow the language is our unifier, right? That the language created a bridge. And so I think what crosses all of those paradigms and all of those bridges is the truth. The truth is steady. The truth is powerful. And most of the time, we only serve up half truths. I always say online, social media is a bunch of filtered truths. So my grandmother would say, in every spool of a lie is a thread of truth. And so I believe that we're experiencing threads. And with me, my goal is to give you the spool of truth. And I also represent the little engine that could. Now, let's just face it. I wasn't the smartest cookie in the cookie jar. I wasn't the prettiest girl on the stage. I wasn't any of that. But all I was the most consistent and the most determined. So for every average, ordinary person who's looking to touch their extraordinary them, I represent that. I represent the little engine that could. We don't have to go fast. Just keep going, because the fast guy is going to run out of gas at some point. We just keep going. And so I represent that. And there's far more people in that bucket than the extraordinary, super amazing achievers who really don't need inspiration, maybe. I'm that person who says, no, hold my hand. See, who do you see when you look at me? Remind me on the days when I forget. Let me know that my mocha skin, my full lips, my round hips, my kinky hair, no, let me know that that's beautiful too. And if you don't, then I need to tell myself. And so I represent every person in every shade that has that conversation where they've questioned. So I think that, I don't even think I know, I am the people's girl.
Let's go to the beginning. Actually, my introduction to you is something that you alluded to, where I actually heard you being interviewed by Sean Croxton, and you were telling the story of, winners never quit, critters never win. But for anybody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know who you are, how do you describe who Lisa Shante Nichols is?
She keeps going to the middle name. What's funny is, and the reason why that's funny to hear, is I just started sharing my middle name about 3 years ago. So it was like under wraps. If you go anything in the last 17 years prior to 3 years ago, you didn't hear my middle name. And it was because I got bullied by a girl named Shantae when I was in elementary. And I was like, Shantaes are mean. I don't want to have attachment to that. And then I realized I am not Lisa Nichols. I'm Lisa Shantae Nichols. So I love hearing you say it. Lisa, the way that I would describe Lisa is she's the surprise that I think my daddy says he saw me coming. My mom, they saw it, or they prayed for it. But I was that person that I remember when I was inducted into my high school's Hall of Fame. That was a major experience. But when my career counselor cried, and I thought, she's seen thousands and thousands of kids come through this school. Why is she crying? So I asked her, I said, why are you crying? She said, because I remember you in 1984, and I prayed that you would find your gift. So my gift didn't show up. It showed up, but it didn't fit anything. So I was captain of the cheerleading squad. I was captain of the track team. I was editor. I was, at the top of the game in the yearbook. Everything I touched, I rose to the top. But my gifts didn't quite have a clear path. And then to add to that, I was functionally dyslexic. I didn't know that coming up. I just knew that learning was hard. Learning was not easy. I had to intentionally learn.
Didn't one of your teachers say to you that you failed English, and then somebody else said to you, which is so ironic, given what you do, that they're like, do not ever speak on a public stage.
My English teacher said that I was the weakest writer she ever met in her entire life.
Says you, the New York Times bestselling author.
Right. Then I was a freshman in college, and I was a run-on sentence mama, though. And I didn't know where to put a semicolon or a colon, and my grammar was weak. She was accurate in that my grammar was weak. I think she was extreme in sharing with me that I was the weakest writer she'd ever met in her entire life. And then that same year, I took a speech class, and I had a lot more confidence in that speech class. And then my speech teacher told me, Miss Nichols, quote unquote, you should get a desk job and never speak in public. So I shouldn't speak or write.
Do you ever, have you ever gone back to them?
Everyone asked me that.
Look at me now.
How you like me now? Hashtag don't, No, I didn't. And for 18 years, I believed them both. And so
in the moment, do you remember how it made you feel?
Absolutely. When my English teacher said what she said to me, I made a decision that no one would ever tell me that again. But my decision right after that was because I'm never going to let anyone see my writing again. So it wasn't from the place of power, it was from the place of avoiding. And I literally, my next 10 years showed that I made that decision. I mean, I was in retail sales, and I was in telemarketing, and I was in, I did all these things that did not require me to write. And when my teacher said I should never speak in public, I struggled with that because I could feel my longing. I didn't have a longing to write. Like I tell people now, I'm not a writer, I'm an author. There's very different things. So writers need to get their credit. They're writers. They sit and they write and they do that thing. I'm an author. So I produce great books. I don't necessarily write. I orate my books because I orate more lifelike than I write. When I write, I get my left brain. I'm like, where does the semicolon go? Oh my God. So I get really, really stuffy when I write. But when I orate, it just flows. So I've orated my last two bestsellers. But I struggled to get to giving myself permission to be an author or a speaker because authority told me that I wasn't good at it. And so I feel like in some ways I crawl to this version of myself at times. I would sit and go, hold on, I want to speak. I got a message, but my teacher said I shouldn't speak. Well, maybe my teacher was wrong and your teacher's not wrong. I had to be in this negotiation. And then when I would tell my parents or my family, I was pursuing something that didn't have shape. And so that doesn't give your parents security. And my dad and my mom just wanted me safe, right? And then I had my son, and they wanted my son safe. And so there are times when nothing around me agreed with my dream. Nothing around me said, go do it, other than my GPS, my God placement system said, there was this longing, and I was like, why? I just can't ignore it. And I had to leap and let go of all security. Now, because I'm a planner, I'm a planning dreamer, and so I would plan and create some financial foundation for myself, or I would have this other thing that I was doing where that just took care of the basic needs, and then all extra over here if something happens. So I was a high risk taker, but I'd have a foundation because I knew that I was supposed early on. I knew that I was supposed to inspire people. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew. Matter of fact, when I was in my 20s, and if I was dating someone, if they did anything that looked shady, I said, I can't be near you. That's because it's going to disrupt the path of my life. And they go, what's your path to? I'm like, I'm not sure, but it's a path in the light, and it's a path for the many. I knew that.
So let's talk about you growing up, right? So I'm from Zimbabwe, and for us, we have this glamorized view of America and, you know, LA. What was the LA you grew up in?
Well, to us, it wasn't glamorous, you know, but we have a glamorous view of Zimbabwe. You know, so we go, oh my God, we want to go back home. Oh my God, we want to see, oh my God, the beauty. So it's all relative. LA for me was the teeth cutting ground. It's where my fight for survival came. I was raised between the Harlem Crip 30s and the Rolling 60s, and those are not cheerleading squads. You know, I had 3 fights a week to get home from school. When I was 15, my teacher said, Lisa, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, alive. And if I get to 21, ask me again, because I've checked off that box. So I didn't have, in my world, I was every 3 fights a week. For 6 years, I didn't wear my hair down. I would never wear loops like that, because they can grab them and pull them. I wouldn't wear open toe shoes because they slow me down, you know? It was fight or flight always. And I didn't even realize that I lived in fight or flight because it was my norm. You know, and you can live in a chaos so long, it's just your norm. And I remember at the time, Sanford and Son was on, Different Strokes was on, Good Times was on. All these shows with black families were on. And every single show, they were struggling, right? And the only show that I could watch that just had peace in it was the Brady Bunch, where the guy with 3 kids marries the woman with 3 kids, and they collided families, and they lived happily ever after. And they had an issue every show, but they'd work it out. And then they walk up these ascending stairs in the show, and I never knew what was at the top of the stairs. So I decided that I don't want to be like any of these other sitcoms out here, because all the sitcoms with black people in them, they're all struggling. I want to be the Brady Bunch. So.
But how do you even dream a dream like that? Yes, I know it's television, but you're living in an environment that tells you otherwise. That's not even possible. And like you said, they didn't even look like you. So it's not even like black people that you could.
I didn't tell anybody, because I didn't want anybody to add any energy to what I already kind of heard in the peripheral area, which is black people don't do that. People who look like you don't do that. You live in this neighborhood, you don't go there. Like, I knew everything. That was the belief system. I was raised, our house was across the street from the police department. So our pastime was sitting on the front porch, watching them unload the prostitutes from the paddy wagon. You know, guessing which prostitute didn't make a lot of money because of how they looked. Like, it was just like, it was all like scarcity and lack. And so I knew that. And it was almost like I protected this little part. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing when I watched the Brady. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want anyone to change it. For a moment, I would escape. For a moment, I would look, and I go, one day, I'm gonna live and have a peaceful life like that, and I'm gonna have stairs that I go up. So listen, you have to know that for the last, I don't know, probably 18 years, I've lived in a 2-story house, and my son is like, Mama, I have to carry this luggage up. Why do we have to get a 2? And it's so funny, because every time I go to the movie, he goes, are you going to get a 2-story again? And it came from my Brady Bunch days.
Got to go up the stairs.
Right. And so now I'm going, I need to find a 1-story for my son. He's like, Mom, he doesn't live with me anymore, but he goes, Mom, really a 2-story? I'm like, a 2-story. It's really important. So it was my escape. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I could make it happen. I remember when I was 13, I was in a girl group, and we had committed that we would stay virgins, that we wouldn't date any thugs, and that we would finish high school. That was our big dreams. And there was 5 of us. And I went away for the summer. And I came back. And everyone had become sexually active. And I was overnight, it felt like overnight, kicked out of the club. And I remember that was my first sense of like, I felt drifted. I felt like I was out by myself and I didn't want to do what was required to get back in the club. And I asked my dad, can I come live with him? My dad and my mom had already divorced. And my dad said, sure. And I moved away from everyone I knew and everything I knew. And that was the first time that I touched my determination. Because for the next 3 years, I knew no one in my neighborhood. And it's awkward to meet people at 14 or at 15. So I didn't meet anyone. I traveled 2 hours to school on the bus because I still went to school in my old neighborhood. And I touched my determination. I touched that I can shift my environment based on my commitment. And when I got that little bit of touch, just moving, just calling my dad, Daddy, can I come live with you? And he was like, baby, I live in a 1-bedroom. I was like, and I was moving from a 4-bedroom house with my mom to a 1-bedroom back house with my dad. I'm like, I'm okay, Dad. And he said, yes. And that little bit of evidence, and I didn't have to do what I would have had to do had I stayed there. That was a little bit for me. And I just kept touching. I never got to any of my goals by taking a big chunk of something. I literally got everywhere one needle point move at a time. One needle point move at a time. But remember, my highest grade in school was a C+. So I struggled through school. And I didn't get a C+ because I didn't try. I got a C+ because when I was in my mid-20s, I found out that I am functionally dyslexic. And so everything had to be in small portions for me. I learned in small portions. If you were teaching me something, I wouldn't let you go from beginning to end. I'd let you go a little bit and go, okay, hold on. Let me replay to you what I believe I heard you say. Did I get that? Okay, great. Keep going. And that's how I also grew me in small portions.
Let's talk about you growing you. And a pivotal part of your life is someone you talked about a little bit earlier, your son, Jelani.
Yes.
Tell me about what it meant for you when he came into your life.
So let me be clear. I'm not going to have this whole glorified mother story like, oh my God, I was so happy he was a man. I did not expect to be pregnant. And the news of being pregnant was met with great trepidation, great fear. I had contemplated having an abortion. I didn't want to. I was scared of the person. I was scared of having a child with the person that I was pregnant by. It was all this stuff. And then I settled inside of what I knew and what I wanted, which was, you don't want to have an abortion. You know that you're going to be okay. This is not how you planned it. Like, it was a very real, scary moment for me. I was ashamed. I wasn't married. I wasn't sure what kind of father he would be. I knew I liked him enough to date him and to be intimate with him. I didn't know if I liked him enough to parent a child with him. I'm just being really honest with you. And I think the most uncomfortable part of becoming pregnant was I was the director of a girls' club. And there were 52 little girls. And while many of their mothers were single mothers, I knew the board of directors would have something to say. And ultimately, they released me. When Jelani came, at 8 months of pregnancy, I had to go get on government assistance because I had lost my job. That was very humbling. I had worked since I was 14 years old. I was dutiful. I mean, I worked every summer. I worked at McDonald's. I introduced the chicken McNuggets. And I got it right. I introduced chicken McNuggets to the world, and I was employee of the month through drive-through. I mean, I was Yes, I had the system down.
Upselling those fries.
I was upselling the fries. You don't want a small, you want a medium, ma'am. And so my work ethic was strong. So it was incongruent to who I was to have to go get government aid. And I would never forget the day I was there. I was about to get in line and I really had to use the restroom, and I went into the bathroom, and at the time I was 7.5 months pregnant, really, really big. Jelani was 9 pounds, 3 ounces when he was born. So I was really huge, and I had my purse on my shoulder, and there was no place to sit my purse, and the floor was covered with what could be urine. And 7.5 months pregnant, you gotta go when you gotta go, right? And I remember just crying as I set my purse down. That how did I end up here at 28? I skipped the ding dong years. I didn't date anybody in my community, just out of possibility. I got kicked out of the club. I moved my location. I moved my home 2 hours away. I did everything right. I was an athlete. I was a cheerleader. I was in student council. I did everything right. How did I end up on Century Boulevard in Los Angeles in the government's assistance office, sitting my purse in some pee? I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that. And I was by myself. It was and it was like life slowed down. Just slowed down. And it felt like the hell was just slower than any other joy that I'd experienced. And then I walked out, wiped my purse off, walked out and stood in line, and everyone was a number, and everyone was just processed, and there was no individuality to it, and no one wanted to know who Lisa Nichols was, and no one cared, and everyone was in one bucket of no money, desperate, and destitute. Everyone was in this bucket, and I was like, I don't fit in this bucket, but I need your help. But I don't fit, and please don't profile me. And there was this thing in me that goes, please see me for who I am, please. And I remember when I got up to the table, the woman was looking down and she was like, next, next.
Didn't even make eye contact.
No. And I said, excuse me, can you look at me? I need to tell you something. She was like, honey, just tell me your name and let me give you your number. And come on. I said, ma'am, I need you to look at me. I need to tell you something. She said, ma'am, I don't have time. And I remember I just hit the table and I said, look at me. And she looked up and I said, my name is Lisa Nichols. And I need a little help. But I am going to be a good investment. I will not be on government's assistance forever. And I will make good with the help you give me. And I just needed you to see my eyes when I told you that. And I took my number. And I went and sit down. 20 years later, I always wonder did that social worker ever know that was Lisa Nichols? And I kept good on my promise. And I just needed someone in that moment to just let me make that promise to them. And I needed to feel a little bit of who I knew myself to be while I was in this dirty place, getting the help of a lifetime, grateful and ashamed at the very same time. I had this mixed emotion, the same emotion I had when I stood in the Thanksgiving line. It's whenever Thanksgiving comes around, I have this stirring because now I live in this big, beautiful house. I'm in this big house in this beautiful community. I travel the world, but every year at Thanksgiving in America, I remember standing in the free turkey line, blended with two things, shame and gratitude. And those two emotions can coexist. So
how do you go, Lisa, from being in the unemployment line and getting the benefits to becoming
Lisa Shante Nichols.
Lisa Shante Nichols. How does that, and what was it that helped you to hold on to that hope?
Yeah.
Because I think for so many of us, we get to these dark places and then we allow the darkness to consume us, and then we give up, right?
Yeah.
It just becomes like...
I think people have a tendency every now and again to think that I didn't have a lot of darkness because I stand in my light today, but by the grace, my light seems to be bright, and I'm grateful for that. So they tend to dismiss the darkness, which is why I'm always bringing the truth forward to go, don't just single angle me to light. You need to 360 my experience. How does Lisa Nichols, who stood in the government's assistance
line, C at best, C+ student,
Yeah.
told she would never speak, grew up in this neighborhood where really there was no hope. How did you then become Lisa Nichols, talking about The Secret and all that stuff? How did you hold on to the hope?
I think I'm so emotional this year. I've been emotional all year, every time I talk about my journey, because I'm in my 20-year anniversary. And I'm like,
wow.
And I have been regarded by so many people as their beacon. And I know what that means. Because I walked many years beaconless. I couldn't find my beacon. I would get close enough to a beacon, and then it wasn't what it appeared to be, you know. How did she hold on to her hope? I used to do it for my son, but that ended when he was maybe 8, believe it or not, because I thought it was unfair to do it for him, that he would want me to do it for me. Number one, it's hard to answer that question because neither one of us knew that I would get here. So I didn't know this Lisa. Will Smith was in an interview once with Tavis Smiley, and Will Smith, and I'm gonna mess it up, so sorry, Will, I messed this up, but it's inspired me so much. He said, I might not be the smartest, I might be the most handsome, but I'm the one that's gonna die on the treadmill. I'm never getting off. And I was willing to stay on the treadmill. I was willing to, I call it Rocky. You know, Rocky gets up one more time, right? And I was willing to just keep getting up. I don't think it's because of my pace or my intellect. It's not because of who I know. It's none of that. It's, I may not get up fast, but you can bet your last Canadian currency I'm going to get up. I never wondered. I kept saying, and people hear me saying it, and it's not a shtick, it's not a speech. It was my birthright to get up. I can't control what knocked me down, but it's my birthright to get up. And I'm sure that every time I got up stronger. Every time I got up in spite of whatever knocked me down that time. And I just have a lot of that times under my belt. So I got hams and glutes and quads and faith and spirit and determination. I tell people, you want to know who I am and what I know, not based on what I've dodged. You want to know what I know based on what hit me and I got over. The beauty of who I am is in what I climbed over, walked through, knocked down, not what I dodged. Does that make sense?
It makes
It's
sense.
not what I dodge. Don't get people say how to be successful. No, you want to keep asking the question, how do you be successful, love, and forgive in spite of that? That's where the juice is. It's not in how do you make $1 million in 6 months. It's how do you lose $1 million? How do you get hit and can love the shooter?
It's something that you say, that I've heard you say, Lisa, where you say your conviction and your convenience
don't
they
live
aren't on the same block.
They don't live on the same block. And most people are either only into their convictions and expect them to show up without any inconvenience, smooth sailing. And as soon as something is disruptive, they get knocked down, the dark. And the dark consumes them. Well, here's what I say. The moment you choose a life of greatness and grandeur, a life of teaching, a life of bigness and boldness, then turn around and say, I accept every inconvenience that will come with it. Choose the inconvenience. Don't choose the goal, choose the inconvenience. The moment you select that thing, then turn around and make a long list of all the inconveniences, all of the losses, all of the lack of sleep, all of the money, whatever dollar you think it's going to cost you, triple that. However long you think it's going to take you, triple that. However many friends you think you'll gain, cut that in half. How many friends you think you'll lose, triple that, and then sign up for it again. Because if you can sign up for everything that it will cost you, then you don't have to worry about anything. For me, I didn't know that then. I'm speaking to you with 20 plus years in, but something in my soul decided I will accept all the inconveniences. I will embrace all of the losses. And if I told you my losses, this interview would feel like a sorrow story. The things I didn't think I'd lose, the people I didn't think I would lose, the health cost, the financial woes, the monetary losses, and every single one I was willing to do. And I'm glad God didn't show me all of the losses ahead of time. Because I would have thought, who could lose that much? Who could pay that kind of price? Who can get off stage and drive themselves to urgent care to have a blood transfusion and lay down for 2 days and then get on stage and do it all again? Who would sign up for that? And so I didn't ever sign up for the whole journey of inconvenience. I just signed up for each inconvenience at a time. I made it individual. I see people looking at the whole picture. They want the whole glory, and they also look at the whole cost. Cut it down. I always say, accept your life in bite-sized, palatable, digestible pieces. You'll get a lot further.
Something you said, Lisa, is that for many of us, we don't want the inconvenience, and then we have the fear about what we'll need, the people will leave behind. Because if I become what my dream is, then I can't kick it with my friends anymore. How do you overcome that?
Right. Well, here's what you have to know. We want connection more than anything. So we want to
be liked. I mean, we live in a world of double tap, right?
We will self-sabotage to stay with the tribe. And I think it's very ego-based to think that you're going to leave everybody. I think that it's also very ego-based, unconscious ego. Like there's an unconscious ego. There's a conscious ego and there's an unconscious ego. It's also an unconscious ego to think you have to save them. Because then you made it seem as if they need saving, really. And who made you the authority on saving them, right? And I've gone through all this. Like, I don't know this from study. I know this from life, right? And so what I realize is my job is to show up and shine, and then to lend my light to whomever wants to sit and be touched by my light. And anytime I dim my light and I dim my shine, I'm actually being more selfish than in service. And because we've mastered that sacrificial service and that sacrificial unconscious selfishness, it actually all sounds beautiful. I don't want to leave my family behind. Well, that's really a sexy way of saying I don't want to play big at the cost of losing big. But yeah, it sounds good. You buy that. I'm not, And so the biggest gift that we can give to people is to let them see our shine and then let them choose what part of our shine they want to play in. And we're trying to control a narrative. When we stop, when we slow down, we say, I want to bring them with me. We're trying to control a narrative. How ego-based is that? Versus saying, here's who I am. This is my truth. Now let's see how we dance together in that truth.
Something else that you talk about, Lisa, is I'm going to butcher this, but okay. You said something along the lines of, don't other me. What do you mean by that? Don't make me special. What do you mean?
Don't make me extraordinary. Because when you make me extraordinary, you let yourself off the hook. And that's an unconscious way of just letting yourself, well, at least you're extraordinary. You got that thing. You don't get to tell me I have that thing, because then you get to say, well, I just don't have that thing. So you're really using me so you can sit down on yourself. Did I say that? Boom. Right. Right. So don't use me to sit down on yourself. I'm not extraordinary. I'm not. I'm an ordinary woman. I'm a mama. I'm a daughter. I'm a granddaughter. I'm an ordinary woman who simply chooses to pick 1 or 2 or 3 extraordinary decisions to make each day. And if I make enough extraordinary decisions, enough days in a row, then I create an extraordinary experience. If I create enough extraordinary experiences, enough days in a row, then I might experience an extraordinary lifestyle. But I'm not extraordinary. I'm choosing. I'm an ordinary woman choosing extraordinary behaviors. Then you can't let yourself off the hook. What do you choose today? Are you choosing ordinary behaviors or extraordinary behaviors? And what that looks like, that's not leaping a tall building at a single bound. Superman really is not super. That S is in Crayola. Like, we're all ordinary people. Every single person we saw as a superhero takes off, they say cut, and they go back to their lifestyles, right? So that doesn't exist. It's ordinary people like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King, choosing inside of their ordinary to do some extraordinary acts. And then they become extraordinary beings just because they did enough. That, like, if you look at it, you know, if you read a private letter that Dr. King wrote to God, and he wrote this letter to God when his first child was born, which means that he felt this way for at least 6 years. And the letter he wrote said, I'm scared. We've never heard this letter about Dr. King. He says, I'm scared. I'm scared for my wife. I'm scared for my child. I don't want to die. But if I stop right now, I fear that the people will stop as well. This is my favorite letter. I don't read the one. I don't recite the one where he's in Washington. Everybody know about. I want the one where he's at the dining room table with a cold cup of coffee, asking God, how do I put down this charge? And said, God, my father is scared. My mother is scared. My wife and my daughter. I don't want any. I had only had 1 child at the time. That means he had 3 more children. I mean, you live that long scared? That's extraordinary. Yeah. That's an ordinary man choosing every day to be in the fight for what's right. And so I'm a true believer that you don't get to be let off the hook of your greatness. You don't get to use your past or your parents. You don't get to use your culture or your color. You don't get to use your lack of rights or your religion. You don't get to use any of that, because you're keeping score on who you're becoming based on who you've been. And your past does not equal your future. Your past is an opportunity to be a setup for your future. It's not in spite of the fact that I failed English that I get to be a 7-time best-selling author. It's not in spite of that. What makes a story delicious is that I probably earned the fail, but I also earned the bestseller status. Is that you get to pull from that and become. Pull and become. Pull and become. Pull and become. And the question that you get to ask yourself every night before you go to bed is, tomorrow, who do you choose to become?
Here's what I'd love to ask you as our community. So I want to know from you, who do you want me to have on the show? Who would you like me to interview? Who are some of the amazing women whose stories you would like for us to share on this platform? If you have any fantastic ideas, and even better, if you can connect me with them, please comment, leave your comment, or DM me and tell me who are some incredible stories I should be sharing on this platform. And the other ask that I have of you is for you to subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and share. Please share. If you find any of our interviews inspiring, please share them with your friends and family.